So let's talk about acid-base balance. So people tend to think that this is one of the hardest things to understand, but just take it step by step. If you have lots of questions, make sure you get in contact with me so that we can make sure you understand this information. So acid-base balance, precisely, so we know that we have to precisely balance the production and loss of hydrogen ions. We don't want to be too acidic or too alkaline. So we know that the body does generate acids during normal metabolism, and because of this production of acids, we tend to see it reduce the pH within our body. So if we look at acid-base balance, hydrogen production equals hydrogen loss, so your normal plasma pH should be about 3.75 to 7.45, so a very small range. So we do get hydrogen gains from a lot of metabolic activities, as I just talked about. So aerobic respiration, and then lactic acid from glycolysis will actually increase our hydrogen ions within our circulation. Hydrogen losses and hydrogen storage. So we're looking at the respiratory system will eliminate CO2. The kidneys can excrete hydrogen ions, and we do have a buffers that temporarily store hydrogen ions. We're looking at red blood cells, the hemoglobin buffer system that can actually store them. So again, to look at the major factors contributing involved in the acid-base balance. So we know our tissues are continuously producing CO2, and with this CO2 comes the hydrogen ions, so that will go into our normal plasma. We have buffer systems that can temporarily store some of those hydrogen ions, so this can provide short-term pH stability from some of these buffer systems. We know that the lungs can release CO2, and the kidneys themselves can release hydrogen ions, so they do play a major role by secreting those hydrogen ions. So if we look at the different kinds of acids that we have in place, we have fixed acids, and these acids do not leave solution. They remain in your body fluids. So sulfuric acid and phosphoric acid are examples of fixed acids. So they are generated during catabolism of amino acids, phospholipids, and nucleic acids. So do not leave solution. Your organic acids are produced by anaerobic metabolism. They build up rapidly, but there's no accumulation. There can be some accumulation of lactic acid, but your body tends to get rid of it. Aerobic metabolism, these guys are metabolized very rapidly, so there's no accumulations, and so these organic acids are part of cellular metabolism. So lactic acid and ketones, which, like I said, don't build up, can be released. And then the last one is your volatile acids, and your volatile acids can you leave the body by external respiration. So carbonic acid, which is H2CO3, forms through interaction of water and CO2. So at the lungs, this carbonic acid breaks down into carbon dioxide and water, which we can then exhale. The carbon dioxide diffusing into the alveoli, and we do exhale water when we exhale also. So if we look at pH balance, like I said, between 7.35 and 7.45, and acidemia is your plasma pH is less than 7.35, and acidosis is going to be the physiological state, and we'll talk about acidosis and alkalosis more than acidemia and alkalemia. So the acidosis is more common due to some of those acid-producing metabolic activities. And so the effects that acidosis has on the body, we do see some central nervous system malfunctions taking place. You can actually go into a coma from having acidosis. Your cardiac contractions can grow very, very weak and irregular. And then if you have peripheral vasodilation, you know that you're going to have a huge drop in your blood pressure from that too. And then alkalosis can be very dangerous, but this is relatively rare. So both of these can be very, very dangerous and do need to be treated immediately. So these are some terms, and again, go back and review these. I think we all know what a pH and neutral and acidic and alkaline acid, what an acid is, what a base is, what a salt is, what a buffer is, but make sure you review those so that you can remember what they are. So if we look at the pH scale, and again, know that there's an inverse relationship between hydrogen ion concentration and pH. So the lower your pH, the higher your hydrogen concentration. The higher your pH, the lower your hydrogen ion concentration. Excuse me. So if we look at carbonic acid, so now if we start talking about some of our buffer systems, and we look at carbonic acid, we know that carbonic acid is a weak acid. So in the extracellular fluid at normal pH, there's kind of an equilibrium state that exists between carbonic acid and hydrogen ions and bicarbonate. So you can see that this is a two-way relationship, so it can go from carbonic acid into a hydrogen ion plus a bicarbonate, and then back and forth very quickly. So we know that these volatile acids can leave the solution and enter the atmosphere very quickly. So at the lungs, the carbonic acid breaks down into carbon dioxide and water, and we've talked about how it leaves, CO2 leaves through the alveoli. So here again you see this is what your lungs would exhale. This is your carbonic acid. This is your hydrogen ion plus your bicarbonate. So we know that this is a reversible. So there should be an arrow here and an arrow here, showing that this can go both directions. And when we see this H2O and CO2, we know that adjustments in the respiratory rate can affect body pH, increasing or decreasing respiration. So if we look at partial pressure of carbon dioxide and pH, so there's, again, an inverse relationship between there. So if your partial pressure of your carbon dioxide rises in your circulation, we're going to see a drop in pH. So CO2 so this is the H2O and CO2 are going to go into carbonic acid. You're going to release those hydrogen ions into the circulation, and then the bicarbonate ions are released, and the pH goes down. Additional ions in bicarbonate are released into the system, and then the pH goes down. Over here we see that the PO2 has fallen, so the reaction goes in the reverse way. So decreased CO2 will lead to an increase in pH. So it goes the different direction. This is your hydrogen ion plus your bicarbonate becoming carbonic acid, becoming H2O and CO2. This removes the hydrogen ions from solution and increases the pH. So the pH goes up. So if we talk about buffers, so buffers are going to actually be a substance that opposes changes to pH by removing or adding a hydrogen ion. So it usually consists of a weak acid, here designated HY negative, and it can donate a hydrogen ion. So you have an ion that is then released by its dissociation, the Y negative. So we're looking at this weak acid being broken down into a hydrogen ion plus the anion that is released. So then they can actually go the other direction, where the hydrogen ion and the anion can combine to form the weak acid. So this actually goes back and forth. This happens in solution. Molecules of the weak acid exist in equilibrium with its dissociation products. So this would be an equilibrium here. The weak acid and its dissociated products would be in balance within the circulatory system. So then if you add in, so this is balance, if you add in a hydrogen ion, it kind of upsets that equilibrium, so you have a formation of additional molecules of a weak acid. So you would have additional molecules of a weak acid being produced by adding in that hydrogen ion. If you remove a hydrogen ion, you're going to again have an imbalance. You're going to go back to the hydrogen ion and the anion and releasing that hydrogen ion. So again, taking it out of balance. So if we look at the three major body buffer systems that we have in our body, and these guys can only temporarily affect pH. We don't have the hydrogen ions are not eliminated from the body. We just kind of buffer them a little bit. So the phosphate buffer system, is important in the buffers of pH of the intracellular fluid and urine. It kind of stabilizes the pH of urine. So this is the phosphate buffer system. The carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system is the most important in the extracellular fluid. The bicarbonate reserves from the sodium bicarbonate in this extracellular fluid are going to contribute to this balance. So we know that the body produces carbon dioxide 24/7. So we know that that carbon dioxide is converted to carbonic acid, which then dissociates in a hydrogen ion and a bicarbonate ion. So the primary role of this carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system is to prevent changes in pH caused by organic acids and fixed acids in the extracellular fluid. So this is going to be the most important buffer system in the extracellular fluid. And then if we look at the protein buffering system, helps regulate the buffer system, the pH in your intracellular and extracellular fluid. There is a lot of interaction that takes place between the protein buffer system and the other buffer systems. So this is the one that usually acts under acidic conditions, binding those hydrogen ions, and it's going to bind them to a carboxyl group and an amino group, and we'll see examples of this. So here's your hemoglobin buffer system, and if you recall back to the respiratory chapter, we have the CO2 plus water, which is going to form bicarbonate, which is then going to form, carbonic acid, which is then going to form bicarbonate, and a hydrogen ion which can bind to the hemoglobin. This is the one that's going to give us the immediate effects within our intracellular system. Your amino acid buffers are going to be all of your proteins, and then your plasma proteins go to the intercellular fluid to be buffered by plasma proteins. And this is a pretty slow process. The plasma proteins are the plasma protein buffers. So if we look at this image, again, these are your three major buffer systems. So intracellular fluid, you're going to have the phosphate buffer system and the protein buffer system. Extracellular fluid, you're going to have the carbonic acid buffer system and some of the protein buffer systems. So they interact with the other two buffer systems, so you have them going back and forth between the two buffer systems. So you can see hemoglobin buffer system is those red blood cells only. All your proteins are your amino acid buffers, and then your plasma protein buffers are here. And again, the carbonic acid bicarbonate system is the most important. So if we look at your carbonic acid bicarbonate, so we have an addition of hydrogen ions from metabolic activity, so it's taking you to a low pH. So this additional hydrogen ion will be in your circulation. The sodium bicarbonate that's in reserve is going to break down into bicarbonate and sodium. The bicarbonate is going to go into your circulation, combine with that hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid. That carbonic acid is going to dissociate into carbon dioxide and water, and you're going to exhale that carbon dioxide in your lungs. So if we look at the hemoglobin buffer system, so again the CO2 combines with water to form the carbonic acid, which then dissociates into bicarbonate, and then you have the hydrogen ion bind to that hemoglobin. So if we need this hydrogen ion, this can be reversed so that we have the hydrogen ion released in, or this hemoglobin can release this hydrogen ion to buffer our plasma. And then this is looking at the free amino acids function in protein buffering. So this is normally the carboxyl groups of most amino acids have released their hydrogen ions, but if it needs to buffer the system, when your pH drops, the amino groups and the carboxylate ions can act as weak bases and accept those additional hydrogen ions, and you see them right here. They can bind, removing these hydrogen ions from the plasma. All right, we're going to stop there. We'll finish up here with your acid-base balance disturbances.